Welcome to What's Your Reel, a podcast where we interview with industry-leading creatives to learn their story about who they are, how they got there, and where they want to go. We invite you to join us on the journey as we roll their reel to learn how these creatives are finding their way to success.
Today we're sitting down with my old film teacher from high school. Preska is the man. I absolutely love this guy. Haven't had the opportunity to sit and talk with him since high school, basically. And that was now almost 4 years ago, which is unbelievable. But just what a great guy and what a great conversation. Talked about some past students that he's had and where they've gone, but also his whole story about his background in photo and his background working on a farm, stuff that I just didn't know. And you probably wouldn't know about your high school film teacher, you know? So it was just an awesome opportunity. Learn more about him. Also the path that he took as a teacher. I mean, this is his passion and his reason behind his passion for teaching is not what you would expect. But it's also really encouraging and really cool.
And with that, let's welcome Tom Preska to the show.
Did you grow up in Vermont?
No.
Really?
Really.
Okay, I don't know anything about you. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Bethlehem, New York, Delmar, specifically. Bethlehem's a town right south of Albany, New York.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting. How'd you find yourself here?
I wanted to be away from my family, and this was a really nice area that was 3 hours or so from my parents. So it was enough separation that I could come up and not be called back home on every whim. We can go into that a little further if you want. The specifics of my upbringing, but I grew up on a farm, and I grew up on a farm basically in a town probably a little more developed than Essex. So all of my friends were, their parents were lawyers, doctors, etc. And my dad was a school bus driver, and my mom was a nurse, and pretty blue collar upbringing. And the farm was a huge part of growing up. You know, it was my grandfather's. It was his family's farm. He was the one that ran it because he didn't want to go to World War II, I found out. So my dad's dad, all the other brothers went. They put the farm in his name so he wouldn't have to get drafted to go. He was the last brother that stayed and ran the family farm.
Interesting.
My other grandfather, my mom's grandfather, he went, got shot, Purple Heart, did his thing and came back and was, it was affected, but my other grandfather just farmed and worked in a factory for a little bit, but that was his main deal.
Dairy farming?
Yeah, we did some dairy farm. We did a lot of hay. So we did a lot of hay for Saratoga. The farm was a dairy up until like the 60s, and then my grandfather closed it, went to work, then retired, and then they started back after he retired. Well, they always had some cows, but then they started more. And my sister's dairying it right now, so it's back functional and crazy. Farms, as you know, are they're a work suck. And so when I was growing up, when I was a kid, I worked on the farm, but I also worked jobs. So I used to ride bikes, race bikes. I managed 2 bike stores in town when I was in high school, and started wrenching bikes on when I was like 14. And then get done with that job, and I'd come home and I'd get on a tractor, or if I wasn't working, and then I do school. So it was either, you were just working nonstop. So, I was looking for places to live that I could be away from that, because if I was in Albany, anywhere close, the phone would ring. It'd be my mom. Your dad's doing something, you got to come help, and it's just, you can't do your own thing, and devote time to your own thing when all of your time is going to raising cows and baling hay and building barns. And, if that's your thing, which was my dad's thing, which was my grandfather's thing, awesome. it's not my thing, because there's not a ton of money in it. Not that I'm looking for like a lot of money, but you need to survive and have a family, and you know, on a 150 acre family farm just isn't doing that these days. And you know, unless you're pulling in wedding revenue, you know, like, you know, you have to, you know, I mean, you CBD, all the whole 9 yards, and it just wasn't, you know. So if I stayed local in Albany, it would have been bad, you know. I mean, it wouldn't for me, right? You know, it'd been good for my family because they get free labor, but
the free part would be the problem for you. Right. How old were you when you moved here?
I moved here right out of college. Okay. I went to SUNY Albany, New York. So I don't know, 21, 22, I moved. Yeah. And going back like to college, I didn't really know what I was going to do out of high school. You know, I took a lot of AP classes. I was really heavy in the sciences, not so good in math. But I also took a lot of art classes, but trying to mix the two was really hard. I took AP art my senior year, and I didn't have enough work for a portfolio because I could only really take one class of art a year because I was taking college prep stuff. I mean, all the other kids were taking 4 or 5 art classes and, you know, whatever basic English or whatever they wanted to do. And so they had these huge portfolios, and, you know, I took art 1, drawing and painting, in just one class a year, and I wasn't able to really put together the 50 pieces or whatever they needed by the time I was a senior. And I didn't really get serious about it until I was like a junior, was when I was really thinking about art. So, you know, I went to college not really sure, always wanting to do art stuff because I always build, you know, we had shops in, you know, my house, we had wood, we had saws, we were always building and creating. And so art was kind of the transition for me to, you know, to use the skills that I knew from farming and from home into something that, you know, these people that I grew up with, who I wasn't really part of their world, these lawyers, these doctors, kids, you know, they could kind of say, oh, you're a good painter, you're a good drawer, you know what I mean? That my parents have drawing, you know, they value that stuff where they don't value a dairy farmer, you know, so that was kind of my crossover to being like, well, I have, you know, some of these skills that I really like because I can build and I can make. You know, took drafting, took, you know, a lot of drawing classes, you know, figure drawing, all sorts of stuff, just, you know, just to work with my hands and to create, you know, and that's what I want to do. So I went to college not really sure, and everybody was like, well, if you go into art, you're not going to make any money. You know, that was the whole thing. You're not going to make any money. You're not going to have a career. You're not going to be able to provide, you know? And it's like, well, shit, I could live on the farm and not make any money. Or I could go into art and I could not make any money. Oh, well, what can I do? But so when I decided to go all into art, and I took a year in college where I was taking like sciences and stuff I was taking in high school because that's what you took, you know, like when I went to high school, it's like you took the classes that were the highest, that were, you know, demanding the highest of you. You know, I really loved history, so I was taking AP American, AP European. My friends who, you know, the lawyers, the doctors' sons were all taking those classes, you know, so I was like, oh, I got to be in those classes. And, you know, I'm just as smart as they are. So, so I take those classes, and I went to college, and well, maybe I'll do something with science. Maybe I'll do something with this and that. But I always really wanted to do art. I always really wanted to make. So getting to school and realizing that, you know, just sitting in class all day and not creating was a huge problem for me. You know, at least in school, in high school, I have one period of art or something where I could use my hands. And I didn't realize until I got to college, like how much that was important. Like how much that was such a piece of me that I couldn't just let that sit for even a year. You know, I needed a shop, I needed a studio, I needed something to create with. So like my junior year or my sophomore year of college, I was like, I'm going straight for art. So when I did that, I was like, well, how am I going to get a job? So I was like, well, if I go to art, I'm going to be an art teacher. I always had really great art teachers in school. I was always really impressed by them. The art rooms were always like safe, fun spaces that were separate from, you know, kind of the academic spaces where you're always getting judged and you're always, I mean, it's great and you're always very competitive, and I'm a very competitive person, but, you know, it's something soothing about an art room where it's like, what can you do? Not like, what can you kind of absorb and, and spit back out? Mm-hmm. So I decided to go into teaching. So where I was at SUNY Albany, it was like, they didn't have an undergrad teaching art program. So they just had studio. So I was like, well, I'm going to take as much as I can. So I took, you know, printmaking. I took clay classes. I took painting. I took photography. I took digital. Well, whatever digital was back then. It was.
Yeah, right.
I was seriously. I had Photoshop like 1 or Photoshop 2. Wow. Seriously, I was like coming up with this stuff, and I bought it on my own, and you know was using it before even they were giving classes. So I took a really wide survey, knowing that I was going to go back and get a master's in education so I could teach. So, you know, I took a lot of classes. The best teachers at SUNY Albany were painting teachers. They were straight from New York City. They'd come up, they'd have an apartment in Albany, and they'd take the train up, teach for 2 days, and then go back to the city. So, you know, they're working painters, professors, you know, photographers. So, you know, being like I did in high school, I just kind of gravitated towards the painters because they were kind of the dudes, you know, the women, the people that were doing the you know, the heavy work. You know, one of my painting teachers was best friends with Chuck Close, and his portraits in the Met, like of the teacher, like Chuck Close painted them, and like, so, you know, they had some really quality staff. So I did a lot of that, and then I started doing a lot of photo. And, you know, I didn't really do a lot of photo in high school. I did mostly drawing, painting, but I fell in love with it in college. And I had a friend, my friend's dad was an architect, but before he became an architect, he was a photographer, and he had a darkroom in his house. And so from like my sophomore year till my senior year, I was basically lived in this guy's basement. You know, he had his own custom darkroom, and just did all my own photo work if I wasn't at school doing photo work. So it was, you know, it was just kind of this, wow, I can kind of do what I want to do. I really love this. I really love that. Just trying all this stuff with the overarching goal of becoming an educator at some point, because, you know, I like dealing with kids, and I like teaching, you know, and the interesting part of it was like my dad, I believe, he's just not a great teacher. You know, it's like he was very specific. He's an only child, and you know, he wants things done his way, and he was just not good about articulating like how you do things. So I think that really pushed me into education, because I realized too as a young age, I'm like, wow, you know, there's a lot to learning how to do stuff and teaching. So that's where that came from. So that was my SUNY Albany experience. It was nice. It was cheap. You know, state schools in New York are much cheaper than state schools in Vermont, because we actually have people in the state to defer the tax costs. You know, it's like there's probably as many people around Albany as there probably more than there is in the whole state. So of Vermont. So you know, it's such a shame for Vermont kids, because, you know, I think my tuition was $2,000 or something, either a year or a semester. I don't know. I just remember paying it out of my checkbook.
Wow.
You know, instead of...
It hurt a little, but it was done.
yeah, right. You know, compared to, you know, I see kids now, $100,000. I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's absurd.
20 grand a year is pretty typical.
Well, and you see people going to school for like elementary ed or something like that, and it's like going to these $50,000 a year schools, and it's like,
right,
let's do the math here. That doesn't
it doesn't work. It literally doesn't work. So that's interesting. So you actually didn't even pick up a camera until college, really?
Not really.
Or into high school?
Yeah, into high school probably, but not
so
really.
You were more the arts side.
Yeah.
Before you were the filmmaking side.
And early side. Too, I like to do a lot of woodwork too. So I did a bunch of that as well. I really like sculpture, kind of those type of things. But yeah, it was basically in probably sophomore year of college where I like really got into photo, took a photo 1 class, got into the darkroom, and you know, cameras, flashes, all this. It was nice.
Wow.
But it was darkroom. It wasn't digital. And
wow. Yeah.
And that
I
was
don't know that world at all.
Crazy transition
to digital.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
I mean, well, it was it's just, I mean, obviously learning the camera is learning the camera, and but the process of digital was process of darkroom was so much part of that art that everybody was like hanging on to for so many years. And it, you know, we're moving away far away from that now. But people still, you know, they do their darkroom work, but I mean, that was it, you know, like a nice print was a nice print, and it wasn't modern, you know, there was, but
yeah, that's interesting.
But yeah, the switch from film, because it was just so painful, because film cameras were so good at the end of their reign. You know, you get a Nikon Pro film camera, and it was, you know, the meters were amazing, and you know, but it was still shooting film, but it was like, you know, shooting 8 frames a second, and it was focusing really fast, and it was doing all that. And then you get this, whatever their digital camera was, and it was like $28,000, and it would shoot like 2 frames a second, and it would shoot like a photo that was tiny, and you know, and so
had a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah, the transition was insane, because the film cameras were basically like shooting with a DSLR now. Right. You know, they were really good. They weren't really archaic. You know, they're all motor drives. They were all autofocus. You know, it's just they weren't shooting on a sensor. They were shooting on that. So it took me a long time, because I didn't have a lot of money. So, I mean, I shot on film a long time, just waiting for the digital stuff to mature and come to somewhat of a cost, you know, because I didn't really work when doing photo work. I freelanced a lot. I didn't work for anybody. So like the newspapers had the nice digital rigs, and, you know, like, but myself, I just had whatever I could afford, which, you know, as a post-college student with an arts degree, moving to Vermont without really any family support, was not
off to a rocket start.
Yeah.
So what's interesting for me in film is I've never done any darkroom stuff.
Yeah.
However, I toyed around a couple years ago shooting on film, and it was like kind of eye-opening. Just like, and this is like my very, very little knowledge of film. But when I always edit with like Kodak presets for digital, right? Yeah. So I went out and got Kodak Gold 200. Yeah. Because that's the preset I always use at film. Yeah. And it just comes out, and it's Kodak Gold 2. I was like, this is amazing, because it does. It's like
your LUTs are done.
Yeah. No, I just couldn't. It like didn't click until I actually did it. That I'm like, the film is what made it, like, does the work. Yeah. Oh, it was so cool, man. It was so cool.
Yeah, there was no fixing stuff.
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, you can use the enlarger to make it brighter or darker, you know, like not dodge or burn an area, but before Photoshop, and then even with Photoshop for the first bunch of years, is like, all right, well, you had to scan this film in. Well, that was wicked expensive, because nobody had like film scan, you know, right. Or, you know, people are putting them on flatbeds that weren't made to do the resolution. So, you know, just things were so pricey. And then you get into Photoshop, and, you know, you couldn't even get it into Photoshop. You had to have zip disks, which were these big disks, because there was no USB, there was no nothing. So everybody used zip disks, which are these 100 megabyte big disks. So you had to have a separate, like, kind of floppy for this zip disk. So yeah, there was a lot of kind of barriers cost-wise to that digital stuff, and it was painful, you know, to use. So I think senior year of college, I remember doing like scanning in photos, having to go to like the local Kodak, what they call Q shops, I don't remember which one in Burlington is, but they were like the high-end shops, and having them like scan my photos and burn them to a CD. And it was $50 or something. And then combining them all in Photoshop by, you know, putting them together into one photo and then have it printed back at the Q shop for another $30 or something like that. And back then, that was a lot of money.
Right. That's a different world.
Making $6 an hour or something.
Yeah,
you know?
that's crazy. That's a different world, man.
Yeah.
That was a different world.
My experience with films I did, I guess it was one semester in high school. We made a pinhole camera out of an oatmeal jar, and then we actually got to develop it like in the pans, stuff in the dark room. So that was kind of fun. And yeah, if it wasn't good, you had to go out to the parking lot and take another 10-second exposure out of your oatmeal container and try again.
That's kind of fun. We still do that. I do that with Photo One. The kids love that. You know, going back to the old process and paper, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I just don't know that world. I just don't know that world.
It's okay.
It's all right. Yeah, I only shoot digital. Anyway,
digital's a different world than it was then too.
Yeah, true. And it's so much cheaper, but it's so expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't change. They charge as much as like you can afford, basically. Isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, and that'll probably always be the case. But so you said you were going to get your master's in education.
Yep.
So that happened.
Yeah, I went to St. Mike's. I moved to Vermont, and I looked up St. Mike's program, which I've heard really a lot of good things about. And I had to do a year. They said you had to have experience with teaching. Well, I didn't have any experience like around kids or anything like that. I mean, I was captain of my lacrosse team, which usually involved yelling at other kids. But, you know, so I did some IA work around in Burlington schools, and that was eye-opening. I did a year as an intensive special needs kind of one-on-one. And so that really kind of taught me a lot, you know, about what kids are going through. And I was teaching in Hunt in the North End, and you know, it was rough. I mean, there was a lot of, you get to see the bad side of it a lot. You know, the kids are neglected. The parents are just horrendous, and you're trying to give these kids this spot of safety, you know, which now with this COVID era is not happening. You know, you have these kids who are, you know, being basically held hostage in their house, you know, like,
trapped at home with a bad family.
And with a bad family, with a, you know, drunk dad or mom, or abusive and just not taking care of them. You don't know if they're getting fed, you know, whatever. And it's like, there's a lot of safety for those kids in school to try to break that cycle, you know, because you see it just like, if it happens to them, it's like so much more able to happen again. You just got to be good parents to your kids, and the world will be a better place, you know, compared to, but yeah, it's a hard thing. So I did a year in Burlington, and got that under my belt. I probably didn't need to after the year. And I mean, it was a painful year. I mean, I subletted a room in Burlington. My check from Hunt was $148 a week, because they didn't have any of the IAs or any of that, weren't in the union or anything like that. So it was just like nothing. And it was like, basically they wanted you to volunteer, you know. It was like me and all of these 70-year-old women who's, you know, not housewives, but they're retirees, just like working with kids who, you know, didn't need money. They just were there. So I started working with like the North End Youth Center. I was teaching photo in the Hunt darkroom. So I did a bunch of after school programs. I did a woodworking program. And I started coaching at Essex. So I saw a lacrosse position in Essex. So at 22 years old, I was coaching 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds at Essex High School. And that, it's funny because you look at Facebook now, some of the kids, like, I mean, they're just as old as I am. They're 40 years old, you know. But so I started coaching at Essex, and that's where I kind of got my foot in the Essex door.
Holy crap, you've been there a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm 45 this year, so it was like 23 years. I've been teaching This is my 18th year teaching at Essex. I taught 2 years at South Burlington before that.
Wow.
So it's been a little bit.
I find that really cool, though, that, you know, a lot of just how your mindset is towards teaching. Because it's not about photo.
No.
It's not about video. It's not even about art.
Yeah, you said earlier that you liked dealing with kids. Yeah. in college, you knew that and wanted to get into that.
Yeah, I mean, I just, you know, adults, and that's the worst part of teaching usually is the adults. I mean, adults all have their agendas. Mm-hmm. And they all have the stuff, and it's like a lot of it doesn't really even have to do with the kids, you know, like, and so, you know, I've had, you know, not great interactions with kids, but I've had way worse interactions with other adults, you know, who think, I don't know, you know, and it's like, just be chill, you know, we're all here for the same, you know, like we're supposedly the same purpose, you know, but people get in their fiefdoms and they get in this whole, kind of thing. And for me, that's a tough part of it. You know, you really need to take the politics out of it. And that depends on leadership. And sometimes you don't have the greatest leadership, or you don't, I don't know, and it just seems like with any organization or something, like people start pitting themselves against each other instead of like just thinking about, you know, like we're all here together, you know, we're all trying to make the best kid. It's not your art program versus your music program, or your art program versus your tech ed program, or what, you know what I mean? Yeah, like it wants to turn into like enemies and stuff. And it's just not, it's not the case, even though sometimes it happens that way where, you know, you're teaching electives and all of a sudden kids sign up for your electives instead of other electives, then it becomes an issue, you know? But, yeah, I mean, I like dealing with kids, just because of the energy, you know, they're still kind of malleable. They're still that, you know, there's a lot to be said for, you know, teaching a kid tools and then watching them kind of use those tools. And I see it in my own kids now. It's like you teach them, you know, how to build stuff, or you teach them, it's like, and then they're doing it on their own. It's like, holy cow, that's like the most amazing thing. You know, it's the same thing teaching a camera and then seeing kids at you, seeing all these other people just actually just going and doing it, you know, and doing it well. And it's really, really rewarding. And I latched onto that early, you know, like I knew I liked teaching, and, you know, it's kind of something to give, but it really gives back to you. You know, it really, it feels good as a profession to be building people. You know, that's my, you know, it's my stock in trade is, you know, building people, which is cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. That's really cool. When you jumped to Essex, were you an art teacher, or were you the photo, video, AV guy?
Oh yeah, that was crazy. That's a good story. So, so at SB, so I had my first job. I interviewed at SB for an art teacher position, and it was part-time, and it was half at the high school, half at the middle school, probably like 3/4 of an art teacher or whatever. So, so I taught photo, I taught painting or art one or something. And I taught like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade art, which was crazy. I'll never teach middle school again. Kids were like gluing, like hot gluing, like paint to the wall. And I mean, you just couldn't turn your back on them. And, you know, I mean, not much different than high school, but, you know, just crazy mischievous. And so I did that for a year, and I got riffed, the pink slip of all starting teachers, doom. So I lost that position because
you got what?
Rift, reduction in force. So it means you're not fired. It just means that your position is no longer there.
Okay. You've been eliminated.
You've been eliminated. Yeah. So what happened was, it was crazy. It was that there was an art teacher in the elementary school. I wasn't even an art teacher. There was a kindergarten teacher, I believe, in the elementary school who was also art certified, and they didn't have enough kids for enough kindergartens. So she got bumped into the elementary art position. The elementary art position got bumped into my position. My position got bumped. I was first year in, first year out, you know, like whatever. So, so first job, South Burlington, great district, enjoying it, well, most of the time. And then, you know, you get your pink slip at the end of the year saying, okay, now you got to do this again, you know, so you got to go through and look, and it's like, oh, where am I going to interview, you know, in Vermont for art teaching positions? Because, you know, one, I have very little experience. And you have a lot of amazing artists in Vermont, especially for like part-time art positions. If somebody's going to take, you know, 2 or 3 classes, you have, you know, separate fields, and you have all these people that you're like, wow, you know, the working artists who have been working forever. But so I interviewed around, and then South Burlington called back, and they were like, you know, you're good with photo. We know that. And we have a position for you in their imaging lab if you want it. And, you know, I did digital, but I never really did any video. So, I mean, other than, I don't even know, even the basic video, I probably didn't even do anything, because it was, well, we did. Growing up, we made videos. My buddies, we had video cam. I didn't have one. They had them. They were expensive. VHS tapes, deck-to-deck editing. I mean, it was really, really hard. And they had a video class in my high school, but it was impossible to get into. It was like one class, you know, during some certain time. And so they hired me back at SB in the imaging lab, which was doing 3D animation and some video. Mostly animation, video, and then I just did photo. So I, you know, didn't really know anything about 3D animation, though I did a lot of drafting when I was in high school. I took a lot of mechanical drafting and all that, and I knew Photoshop, so I just learned as I went along. I just picked up books, and, you know, the YouTube wasn't huge then, so it was just books and videos on books, and, you know, in the back of the DVDs. And I taught myself with help of Mike DuPont, who was like the aide there. They had like a teaching assistant. So he helped me a little bit. Mostly it was just, you know, hitting the ground running and learning on my own, which was fine because I was used to that. Oh, yeah, and I had to do web design too. I had to teach web design, so I had to learn web design as well. It was a fun year. I was a little busy. Thank God I was like, I think I was like 24 or something. Now I'd be like, I quit. Take 4 different disciplines and learn them while you're trying to teach them. But yeah, no. So I got hired back there in 3DS, doing 3ds Max, a lot of animation stuff, which then led into more video. And the position at Essex, which I student taught at Essex with Julian and Wendy. And so I knew about the video position at Essex. I knew about Vic Loya, who was the me before me. And so I'd met with him. I've talked to him. And so his position opened up, and I applied for that and luckily got it. And I've been at Essex ever since. So I guess the original question was, where was I? But so the video position, because Vic didn't have an art license, was a tech ed position.
Interesting.
Yes.
So interesting.
So it was an issue. So I was in the practical arts. So I was teaching web design. Photo was still under the arts, so they wouldn't let me teach photo, which was like my passion. The whole reason I was doing all that.
Of course.
But Wendy and who was there? It was mostly Wendy. Was, you know, amazing teacher, and Wendy James, she was awesome. So I mean, there wasn't like they needed me there to teach the kids anymore. But so I taught, what did I teach? I taught building design one year. That was fun. But mostly computer animation and video production was what I started teaching there. And with some random classes thrown in sometimes if my schedule wasn't full. But that was back when Essex was 1,600 kids. So all the classes were half year. So I would teach, you know, 6 animations or something first half of the year, and then teach movie or whatever. So animation was the big class back then. It wasn't video. It was this pre-YouTube, you know. It was, you know, so video wasn't like this big thing. So everybody wanted to do animation because you couldn't do animation at home.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I guess you couldn't do a lot of video at home, but, you know, there was iMovie and there was like basic, you know, it was there. But, so animation was the big draw. So we were teaching a ton of animation, our video stuff was wicked limited. Vic was more live production, so there was like a mixer and like a couple studio cameras in the studio, but they hadn't used it. The principal would do like video talks to the school, like through the school had TVs in every room, and he would come on Friday morning or something like that and do video talks. But it was mostly graphics and animation was what was driving that lab, the smart lab. And then it kind of all changed, and the animation numbers went way down and the video numbers just went way up.
You said back when Essex was 1,600. What are we at now?
1,200.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it was crazy. You couldn't move through the halls. I mean,
That's
it's the
so
same
weird.
building, and that's 1,600 EHS plus the tech center.
Oh, wow.
Or whatever, you know. So
Yeah.
there were a ton of kids, and they're, you know, again, like I teach full year classes now because, you know, with movie, you used to be able to fill like a half year movie one, like 2 of them, and now we can fill 1. So we went to full year classes just so we could save kind of positions, and video, half year video is useless.
Yeah.
You know? So
Sure.
half year, a lot of things are hard to do with the arts, but yeah, video, it's like in photo in some ways too, you just, well, not so much now, but back in the day, it's like you just barely get them developing their first roll of film, and that would be December, or, you know.
Yep, class is done.
Right. It's so hard, you know,
Getting
like
started, yeah.
shooting, exposing, learning the camera, and then so that's what it would end up, you know.
You said there was a big shift between animation and video. Was that just because the technology was getting better, so students' interest changed?
I don't know. I mean, I think the technology was getting more accessible. I think with the web and some of that stuff coming along, it became easier to edit. I think iMovie, I just think, you know, not consumer, but I guess consumer video was a lot more accessible than it was in the past. But it's still hard, you know, like when I got there, we had 16 computers, and he bought like these, Kai Vision, I don't know, some like very specific video computers, and they were like $5,000 a piece, and they had 20 gigabyte hard drives.
Wow.
Yeah. And only 4 of them worked to capture video. So they all had these like capture cards, because you had your like mini DV cameras, and you had to plug them in. Firewire. You had to, so it was real time. So the kid would go shoot something, and then you have to sit there and record it onto the camera. Well, only 4 of my cameras work. So this was like my first year. Wow. And so I'm there, and I'm like, all right, so I got four computers. I got 16 kids, or probably like 20 kids, knowing the school, you know, you just 16 computers will put 30 kids in your class. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds right.
Because that'll work.
Yeah.
But no, it was probably 16 kids, but I only had 4 working computers, and so I went to IT, and I'm like, what am I going to do here? I'm like, none of these work. And they weren't Dells, or they weren't anything. They were these like specific video things that were having all these codec issues that the IT guys didn't know what the heck to do with. So I went to the head of IT, and I'm like, help me. And he's like, well, maybe you shouldn't name your class movie production.
What?
I'm like, that's, so this is my first year, like second semester. I did animation for, like, trying to figure out like how I'm going to do a movie production class with 4 computers, and, you know, so, but we ended up getting rid of those very quickly, I think within the next year or something, and getting something that sort of worked, you know. But even then, storage was a big problem, and, you know, the hard drives were really small, and trying to do video and RAM and all that, even with SD video, it was taxing the computers to run anything.
That's so weird to think about.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was definitely an interesting thing, but yeah.
Dang. So Essex turned into like the movie school of Vermont, though.
Yeah.
I mean, like literally. I mean, the freaking Smart Lab, as I knew it, was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I never realized how unbelievable it was until I graduated.
Yeah.
Of course.
And
of course, I don't use it while I'm there.
you guys, well, you guys had a really, some really amazing kids too. And I feel like in some ways it's kind of slumping, which is really sad. And I mean, not through no fault of anybody's own, but it's like we had a lot of kids who were really interested in going to, like, devoting their lives to video.
Yeah.
And right now we have a lot of kids who are, sort of interested in video, but they're not like going to film school, or they're not, that's not their path. So it makes it really hard to be, we were at such a high bar, but without the kids that are kind of devoted to that, you can only do so much, like if a kid doesn't want to learn how to pull focus or whatever, to make a cool shot, it's like you can't sell them on it. There has to be this intrinsic, want for these kids. And I just see that's kind of over the past couple of years, it just seems like it's kind of going down the fire, like the kids that, really love photo video, or that really want to dedicate themselves to anything. I think that, I don't know if it's the internet or everything, like pulling everybody in every different direction, but I don't know. I just definitely, I feel like I'm the old cranky teacher saying, like, back in the day, but
no, it's really interesting though, as you're seeing the next generation of kids coming up and being affected by the internet and whatnot, and maybe that is changing the way they're perceiving some of these skills and hobbies and interests.
Well, and I wonder if it's a shift too from kids that were normally watching movies and higher production. Obviously, kids still watch a ton of movies, but they watch more YouTube stars. They watch more, Cleese McFarland, and where they can identify more with these just average people with a GoPro. And rather than, you can't really identify more with. Right now, with making the Avengers, what I mean? Like, the quality, it's like, it's insane.
There's a bit of a jump there.
Right?
Right, exactly.
Like the entry to level, entry to that, even like, old school Star Wars and stuff, it's like you can get it. It's, that's a little bit tech, but now with all of the animation and, we're just going to replace all the skies in this movie. We're just, I don't know. The amount of production now, the quality is just so high. That it gets away from that kind of organic filmmaking. The movies that kids watch, at least, are, super polished.
Yeah.
So, turning it into the video. So we had this awesome AV director back when I started. His name was Kevin Regan. He's back up in Vermont, but he grew up in California, and he was a big video guy. And his dad was in production. And so he really helped kind of turn it into a place for video, because he was really passionate about video. So he would buy nice cameras, and I really didn't know what was going on at the time early in my career, but I was teaching mostly animation. He's like, well, why don't we do more video? And I'm like, I don't really know anything about video. So it was one of those things where I'm like, wow, I really got to figure that out, because I never had the opportunity to do video because it was so expensive, and photos relatively cheap compared to when you start talking video. But then I was like, oh wow, I can look at video from a photographer's perspective. It's just a camera, when I was always, and that's what happened when the DSLRs hit, and that's when it really took off, because using a video camera compared to a DSLR, I was like, what the heck? You don't do anything. Back in the day, now, like, FS7, all whatever, they're super photo-y.
I was just about to say, it's like, I'll pick up one of your video cameras and not know how to use it still.
A basic camcorder.
Yeah.
But like, I can pick up anything that resembles a DSLR and be fine.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway.
Right. So back when like DSLRs happened, that was when I was like, oh, this is amazing. Because I can
familiar ground.
Right. I can teach all the photo stuff. The video stuff is, editing, which is, it's editing. It's, there's a lot to it, but it's not picking up a camcorder that doesn't give you many options, and then trying to figure stuff out. A lot of filmmaking was, the lens choices, Once you get a video camera, it's like you don't have that depth of field. You don't have,
right.
back in the ones that we could afford at school. You know, like you're not shooting film, you know, and you were still shooting film and video. I mean, it was back in those days. And then the DSLRs hit, and then that's when it really started taking off. I mean, Henny was pre-DSLR, but he had a Sony camcorder or whatever, but he just wanted to shoot skiing stuff. So
was Henny your first dude who took it somewhere?
Yeah, Henny was definitely the first dude. I mean, he was there either the first or second year I was at Essex.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean it was a long time ago. Maybe the third. I don't know, but it was really, really early because Kevin was still there. He did an independent study with me because he took Vic Loya, I think, for a year, and then he took an independent study with me, and all he wanted to do was shoot skiing stuff. So we had Max in the AV space, and he used Final Cut. Back then, like, Final Cut was the premiere that it is now. It was either everybody shot it on Avid or Final Cut. But so he went in and he would take his ski footage, and we'd, you know, sit down and work through edits. And, you know, one time he came in and he had this shot where he was filming while he's skiing. He's skiing, filming someone else.
Yeah.
And this guy, he's following camming him. Guy goes off a jump. Henny goes underneath the back of the jump, catches him up in the air, and then lands, and he turns around. I'm just like, oh my God. It was like, I was like, all right, he's going to be, you know, like a skiing videographer. They're just like, I can't even comprehend what he just did.
Wow.
You know, like, you know, on skis while filming.
That's so cool.
And so I only had Henny for like a year, or like, I mean, it might have been his senior year. And then he went off to some college and still shooting video. And then he got an opportunity to interview Alex Honnold. And it was one of Honnold's first videos that kind of documented him a little bit. And that's what really got him on the map. So he shot Alex back in the day. I mean, and Henny was a big New Schoolers or whatever, and did this little, followed him, you know, in his van or whatever, and it was terrible, not terrible quality, but, you know, it was like lower SD, you know, quality, not like now. And that got him kind of noticed by a lot of people, the Camp 4 collective people, Jimmy Chin, like the, you know, and so he worked for them for a while and went to Tibet, did all sorts of cool stuff. But, you know, it's interesting, and you know, keeping in touch with him and watching him kind of meander through the life of a videographer and a freelance. I mean, it's a tough gig, you know, and he has stuff. He was working for the city of Utah, or not state of Utah, doing tourism stuff, and he was working now for OSearch, like doing tracking sharks, you know. it's
you remember that conversation?
Yeah, we were
Jack, right?
talking about
Jack,
that.
yeah, Jack went with him, yeah. And I'm not really sure what he's doing now. I just saw he had an RV and his mom, and I don't know if they're doing something else or what, but it's an interesting life. And I mean, I look back and I go, oh, how old is he now? And you know, is he going to settle down? Is he, you know, it's like the freelancer life is great when you're in your 20s, you know, but once you move beyond that, and that was something I was kind of always aware of, was I didn't want to freelance, you know, like I mean, I did, I shot a lot of weddings. I shot a lot of stuff. I got pictures in the New York Times, like, you know, like doing just random work that I picked up, but you know, you needed the 9 to 5, you know, like to move on with your life. You know, it's very hard to kind of piecemeal stuff together and hope the work keeps coming in, you know. Interesting.
Who was the Celtics guy? What's his name?
Alex Herco.
Herco, that's it.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Not Henny, it's Herco.
No.
When did he come along?
Oh, God, I don't know, years. My memory.
Well, I don't need just a
how old is he
year.
now, like 26? I don't know.
I've only met him once. So
30? I don't know. He's somewhere in there. He's not that old. So he was there. I think we didn't do EHSPN as a class yet. It was a club for years.
Really?
Yeah. So this was like the Jeff Goodwin year. So Jeff Goodwin was like in between Henny and Herco. And Jeff started EHSBN. He started intramural hockey. So like two of my favorite things at EHS, he founded. And he was huge in video, and now he like builds furniture, and he worked for Habitat for Humanity for years, but he went to Ithaca College to the Park School on a full scholarship. But he spent his whole, junior and senior years in the lab, and he started EHSPN all on his own. Wanted a sports show, got his buddies together. They went out, they shot, caused all sorts of trouble. Gotten so much trouble with the administration and stuff for, it was just jokes, and they asked Leo like what his favorite STD was.
Jack said that same thing. Jack
Loud expression.
That was a good
awesome.
one. No, but it was before that. Like they were, their color commentary was a lot of questionable things, but that was all through Kevin through the AV department. So I didn't get a lot of heat for that because it wasn't really my production. Jeff was doing it on his own, kind of, through the AV part of the library. So it wasn't a class. It wasn't anything I really had to do anything with. I was just kind of like laughing and going like, oh my God, but it was video coming out of, that area. So, I was somewhat involved with it, but, so Goodwin started both of those. And so when Herco was there, I think it was still, it wasn't a class yet. So he was like student producer of VHSBN. He did everything, there was like 4 or 5 kids that did it. They shot games, they interviewed, just really into sports. Max Bailey around that certain time, who was really amazing videographer. He's out in Vancouver. And they just made it happen and started the club after Goodwin restarted it, kept the club going. It got shut down for a couple of years there after Goodwin left. But then there was Nick who started it back, and then it kind of Herco took it from there. So he was really into EHSBN. He did movie 1, movie 2. Herco did a great film called Love Sniper, which was classic. And and then he wanted to do business. So he went to UNC for business, and he did a minor in film and realized when he got out he wanted to shoot. And so he kind of melded the two, and he moved to Boston, and he just did as much as he could to work, and he was, devoted himself to film and photo. And the dude's smart, and he's an incredibly hard worker. And he did, like school portraits. He did like a year of working with that, and then he got into real estate photography. And he did a lot of drone stuff back when drones were just starting, and got noticed, and he had video on local Boston TV, and then I think nationally his drone video got out. And he ended up like moving through a bunch, well, not bunch, but like I think one real estate firm and then another, and then he got poached by an advertising agency, and he just started applying at the Celtics because he wanted to do sports, because he loved sports, and that was cool. He put in his application. He never heard. Job came open, and I think he put another application, or he didn't, or something. But it was through, like, he was doing a bunch of wedding work too at the time, and his wedding stuff was phenomenal, like video wedding work. And one of the guys saw the wedding work, and I think maybe that was the real estate guys, but that's how he ended up having that job. The advertising company. Sorry, trying to keep track of all.
Yeah, it's all good.
Cam, let me tell your life story.
Let's do that next.
So he ended up getting the job, and it was like an all-day interview at the Celtics. Like, and he said it wasn't as much an interview as seeing whether or not like he could survive a day there because it's crazy.
At the Celtics.
At the Celtics. Because he's not shooting like video cameras of the game. He's shooting promotional stuff.
Yeah.
So for the web. So he'd go out and shoot stuff that would, that day, edit it after the game, release it the next day, and then do a lot of promo stuff. So he would do a lot of Gatorade shorts with, Marcus, all these things that like to work with the sponsors, so that they would, be able to monetize some of that stuff and show the value of partnering with the Celtics. So his business degree was really huge in getting that job. And his film skills are, phenomenal, but it wasn't. I think he was kind of one of those crossovers like me where he really liked the stills and then realized that, with the DSLR, it's just this, you kind of, I just going to make great images. These are going to be moving. And, he made that transition. I mean, obviously he shot video while he was at EHS, but he wasn't, that wasn't his, his focus wasn't going to school for video for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think it's freaking awesome that you've had these people like go and do this stuff. It bugs me to think about the smart lab though.
Yeah.
Cause it's like, and shoulda, coulda, woulda. There were a lot of, I hated high school.
Yeah.
I think you know that.
Yeah, sure.
Most people know that I did not like high school or any school really. The only thing I remember is the smart lab stuff.
Right. And that's kind of why we do the smart lab. We get kids that, like a Kale.
For those that didn't have a smart lab, go a little deeper there.
That's just the video classroom.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And
that was Vic Loya. He named it the smart lab for some reason.
Yeah.
It was student media and art or something. I don't know.
Oh, it was an acronym?
It was an acronym.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't like a very good acronym either, but it's like, it is what it was. But yeah, no, Kale was a good example of that, where he came to me and, he's like, what do I need to pass? He didn't like academic, not that you didn't like academic, but he didn't like the academic piece of anything at all. Yeah. And he just wanted to know, what do I have to hand in to pass? He'd create these amazing videos.
Yeah, he would do stuff all the time.
But wouldn't like do the stuff that that would like get him passing the class. And there were a lot of,
he's pumping out more stuff than anybody, but it wasn't the assignments.
Right, exactly. And that's fine, and so trying to make this place that was, because I get it, I was kind of an outside kid, outsider to that. My parents didn't care. I was advanced ever since I was, kindergarten. They're like, you test as a 5th grader or whatever, when I was in kindergarten. So I was they tracked us when we were like younger. So I was in a school of, I was always in advanced classes. And if I was in a 3-4, I was like one of the 2 3rd graders in a 4th grade class or whatever as I went up through. So they got like really hands off with me. And, so when I got to high school, it was just kind of, you figure it out, and where I really needed some guidance rather than, you go do, you're smart, you figure it out. But I was always an outsider in that way. And I think like a lot of people, that's not where they thrive. High school is not where they thrive. So trying to create a place where, it helps kids that, need somewhere that's reasonably academic, but also allows them to, work with their energies. Yeah.
Having you sit across the table from me is very strange.
Yeah.
Just so you know. I haven't thought about high school this much since high school, probably. Because I'm just thinking right now, it's like I'd be going into my senior year of college right now.
Yeah.
Which is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But I think about high school and like, what kills me, I like, shoulda, coulda, woulda. I wish I knew what I knew now.
Yeah.
In high school.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like, if and honestly, that's a work ethic piece, because school is very much like I never did bad in school.
Right.
Really. I passed completely fine. I think I was like 0.1 from honor society when I graduated or something like that. Because I just did the work.
Yeah.
And in high school, if you just do it, then you're probably going to be okay.
Right.
But I didn't want to ever do anything extra.
Right.
And then when I started working on Mansfield, you know, the production company, as a junior, that crushed all hopes of doing anything extra in school.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I went to work every day after school, and
that is extra though.
I know, but I think about high school, and it's just like, oh man, the opportunities. Like, I still think some of my best work came out of high school.
Yeah.
The first 50 we did.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Maybe it's not the best, but it's my favorite project I've ever done. I mean, it was freaking awesome.
Yeah, Night of the Living Dead is by far the craziest thing. Yeah, that was.
Oh, yeah.
That was great, too, just for this little project.
Oh, and I thought it was terrible. Yeah, that was a blast. Night of the Living... Oh, yeah, Night of the Living Dead was... That was only the first scene.
The first scene, yeah. Well, yeah.
Night of the Living Dead, and then we did the one with the puppet.
Yeah.
That one's still a favorite of mine, but I can't watch it anymore because it's too cringy. But at the time, I was so stoked on it. And then,
the lighting and everything was really amazing, and I mean, just
all by accident,
above and beyond.
By the way,
I
remember the
best.
You
lit stuff,
bro. Yeah, like I used lights.
Yes,
but I remember my favorite lit. My favorite part of that is when, I don't know if you remember this, when Tommy is getting text messages on the bed and it's lit by a practical.
Yeah.
And it's all like color graded really cool and all this stuff. But it's like the color grade I forgot to set the white balance in camera and it was super cold, but it worked so beautifully. Now that I look back at it, I'm like, man, that was so awesome. But it wasn't on purpose. Yeah. And then, of course, the Haiti film came out of high school, which changed my course for the last 4 years.
Yep.
But so actually I haven't thought about it that way. The Haiti film was definitely above and beyond a little bit, but I don't know if you remember this. The last year I didn't do EHSPN.
Right.
I did movie.
Right.
And I did that consciously, not because I didn't want to do more work. I did that because I was like, I want to make movies.
Right.
And I hated shooting sports.
Yeah.
And now I'm like trying to shoot sports. It just doesn't make any sense. But I just wish that I knew like what we had at Essex.
You used the heck out of it though. I mean, really.
Not as a senior.
Yeah, not as a senior, but man, you were doing Mount Mansfield Media. You know, you were doing, you took it what you needed to do. I wouldn't regret anything that you did in high school as far as not suiting you. I think you knew what you needed to do rather than like what, sometimes it's like I ask EHSPN, I ask from the kids to provide this to the school. You know, and it's like, you being one of my better shooters, it's like, why aren't you doing EHSPN? Because your shots would be amazing in this prove it. It's like, that doesn't matter to you. Right. If you're interested in making film or making doc at that time, it's just more practice. But it's more practice for you, but it's also just another thing, you know, like you're working at my Mansfield, you're doing, your plate was full, you know, and it's like, I recognize that, you know, it's like
you're passionate not like in sports.
Well, you know, it is what it is, you know, and you can only do as much as you can do, you know, and you start picking and biting off more than you can chew, and just the work waters down, you know, and like you can just do so much.
And honestly, what it is now is like, I wish I pursued relationships with more teachers. I love Norris, dude.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
I haven't talked to him since I had his math class, though.
Yeah.
But he's probably the only math class I remember, for instance.
Yeah.
Because he was just, him and I would talk about drones because he had a drone.
Yeah.
You know? And I remember my first year out of high school, I went to a football game and just talked to him for a while because he was just there.
Yeah.
But I think I've changed a lot in the last 4 years in the sense of like, I'm just so much more interested in people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I missed out on so many opportunities with those people.
Well, you know, as a high schooler, everybody's interested in themselves. You know, you turn into that, like you're coming into yourself. You know, you're not thinking about the other people. But I mean, our job is there to be there and to provide these, you know, experiences for you. And, you know, the nice ones are the ones that aren't like the classic teacher, just, you know, it's like learning about Archimedes or whatever they do in math. I don't remember any of that.
Yeah. I don't know what they did. I don't think I've used it yet either.
But, you know, talking about drones and doing, you know, talking about things that, you know, are related to your life, my life, things that, that aren't on the page is what makes a lot of teaching, you know, enjoyable. 'Cause, I mean, I can talk about f-stops for
yeah, all day,
hours.
right? Yeah, right.
But
no, I think it's just interesting. This is the first time probably since high school that I've missed it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of...
There's always, I mean, anybody, even
Yeah.
the kids that do it the most, there's always regrets, and there's, you know,
yeah,
like,
no, but it's
there's
just
always
like...
shoulda, coulda, woulda.
No, I just think about the people that I was with, and it's like, you know, I bet Norris is just such a cool dude that I just don't know. You know what I mean? But never would care to ask.
Yeah, it's fun. We coach bowling together, and that was fun.
I love that you guys do bowling, man.
I mean, it was one of those things where there was some great stories there, though. But like Norris, like, is so amazing and so competitive. Like athletically, he's like insane. Like he just
really?
practices things to death. Like he plays golf, and he's probably one of the better golfers in Chittenden County, but he doesn't compete because he doesn't want to be competitive in golf. But he's like super hyper competitive in like whatever, you know.
Right.
And so he coached baseball. I coached lacrosse. We both had kids, and we're like, oh, we're not going to coach anymore, you know. And then Hockenberry came. He's like, you guys want to coach bowling? And you know, I bowled since I was a kid. My dad still bowls. He's crazy. He's like bowling in senior leagues at 7. He's got like a 220 average or something.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's nuts. So he started me when I was little, you know, and like, so, I mean, I bowled competitively in high school. Well, not in high school. Well, yeah, but in high school. I bowled competitively in middle school. I was a second varsity in 6th grade on our high school bowling team, because in New York you could compete as a high schooler.
Yeah.
So I bought a big leather jacket, and I put, you know, like a leather jacket from like a football jacket, and
Yeah,
I put my like varsity letter
Oh, that's awesome.
on there, and the football players like in middle school got so pissed because
Oh,
like
I
they
bet.
couldn't, they would never play high school, you know, they play Pop Warner or something like that. They'd always wear their Pop Warner jacket. So I got my varsity like starter jacket in 6th, 7th grade. But I stopped bowling for the school like when I was like 8th grade. It just was the crowd. It was not like my people, and I needed to focus more on academics. And I was way more into different sports. So I started running track, and just, I don't know. I was like my sons are. I was like a bigger kid, so like bowling was a fine sport. But as I like matured, I was shot up and was skinnier and like more active, and I just wanted to do more active sports now that I could, that I wasn't like a chubby kid, you know, that I was like weighing down. But so bowling, I kind of was just like, I'm done with this. I mean, I bowled in tournaments and stuff, but so Norris started bowling. I don't know, he always liked bowling, but he started bowling with my team on Wednesday nights. We had a men's league team, me and Norris, and a bunch of other guys, 3 other guys, and it was interesting. I mean, Norris is he's very pure. He's very you know, and the bowling alley is, you know, blue collar as blue collar gets, and it is what it is. So it was an interesting experience to kind of bridge that gap, because, you know, me growing up, like, that was my home, you know, and like like I understood everything about these guys that are, you know, working seal coating or whatever, and out of jail, or, you know, like, I mean, it's just like it was. But like Norris, just like watching him interact with those people, and it was amusing. So, but he got so much better at bowling because he just obsessed about it, and now he's got like, he hasn't hit 300 yet. He's got like 2 or 3, I think 3 299s. Like he's shot like crazy, and then like comes up in the last shot with one short. And it's the most painful thing to watch. I feel so bad when I watch them. I mean, I've only shot 1 300, but I'm like one of the, you know, that was like the big thing when I was a kid. My dad's only thrown 1, I think, maybe 2. But the big thing was to get your 300. But back when I was bowling, the technology was so bad that like the balls were not reactive the way they do now. So you don't get the pin carry, you don't get the scores you do now. Now the scores are way higher because the equipment is so much better. So it used to be such a crazy thing to get a 300. Only a few people, you know, would be able to bowl them. Now, you know, these guys are bowling 50, 60, 70, 300s. So it's kind of watered down, but so once I got my 300, I was like, oh, good, I can kind of competitively kind of write this off my list.
Right,
and,
exactly.
And then we got called back to coach bowling, which has been amazing. That's a cool sport, like because the kids we get aren't your normal sport kids, you know. So it's neat to be able to provide a sport for kids who aren't, going to be playing football, going to be stars on the track team, aren't going to be, but they still
They aren't
want
necessarily athletic.
Right. I mean, it still takes a lot of skill,
Certainly.
but they're just a different kid that you're not going to get on your normal teams. And so seeing some of these kids, have success or be counted on, and there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot pressure to perform, and that carries across everything, carries across your life. When things get tough, you got to stand in there, and you gotta throw that ball, or you got to do whatever. And that's what sports provide kids, is the knowing that when you're knocked down and getting beat to the pulp, that you get back up and you go and you
Absolutely.
play defense, or you throw the strike, or
Yeah, something that's kind of getting lost too.
Yeah.
My senior year gym class was online bowling.
Nice.
Online bowling.
Online bowling. There's such a thing. It was awesome.
Wow.
Isn't that great? I remember Tyler Kaminsky. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, I
took
remember
online
Tyler.
walking, and I took online bowling.
Online walking.
Online walking.
Oh my God.
True story. It's like one of those. His assignment every day was to walk like 10 miles or something, and there was an app that tracked it. Or you could say that you didn't have a phone and have your mom sign off on it. So that's what he did.
Oh God.
Jeez.
I love it. Anyway,
How's his travel blog coming?
dude,
It's
he's
amazing.
like making good videos.
I know he's all about
It's so cool to watch, and he's like making them. He's making these sweet drone shots.
Yeah.
With like his drone in his hand.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have like a gimbal or a camera. Or
Right,
I mean, he
right.
just got a camera, but he was like making these really good travel videos.
Yeah.
And I remember he made this like 45-minute thing.
Yeah.
In the first minute, I was like, "Oh my, this is like Sam Colder level."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he came up with a note. He's like, "Those are all my good shots," and the rest is iPhone clips for 40 minutes. It was so awesome. But yeah, it's so. I never in my life did I think someone like Tyler would be making really sweet videos.
I think he took movie.
Did he?
He took something.
Maybe
animation. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
He probably did something.
One of my classes.
Yeah, that's awesome. But where do you are you happy with the career you've lived?
Oh yeah, I mean, being an art teacher. Holy hell, yeah. I mean,
This is what you wanted to do.
yeah, it's really
It's awesome.
it's what I wanted to do. I mean, it took me a little while to figure it out, but yeah, it's a great career. It's not the most lucrative career in Vermont, better than other places, but I get the summers for how long, who knows, but I get time off to pursue my passions. I work in my garage, build stuff.
Yep.
And that was something I really wanted to have. Is I knew that I was going to be doing things a lot of times that didn't make a lot of money, like that my passions were either woodworking or something that, so, I mean, I didn't really know what it was going to evolve to, but when I was in high school, college, I realized that, I'm going to need something that can provide me some time that I could paint or, do art and be able to feed myself.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's a great job for that, as far as, being able to work with the arts, but also to give yourself some time to work on your own things and your own passion projects. Because a lot of times when you're working, well, I mean, now it's a little different with the gig economy, but you're working for you're working for one company for your whole life, and you're in management, you're working 60 hours a week, and you're,
Yep.
and then you just try to retire. And Norris and I were having this conversation probably before the school ended, but it was somebody he knew that just retired and then ended up dying. And he's just like, what am I doing? He's like, he's like, I save all of this money up for retirement. And he's like, how do I know I'm going to make it to that point that I'm even going to be able to use it? So it's like, you see a lot of people that, build these careers but they don't have enough time to just like enjoy their life, and a teaching career allows you at least a little bit to the freedom of time, and this whole time, even COVID has been awful, but I've been home with my kids since March, and my 13-year-old, my 8-year-old, I mean, it's just like, it's amazing to have that time that, I mean, we'd have the summer, and obviously we probably did less this summer than we would do, but a a lot of people don't have that time, and they're working 40 hours a week, and they're not going to the swimming hole, and they're not, or they're coming home after work tired. And so it's a good career. I mean, it'd be nice, obviously monetarily, if, I had a side gig or something where I was making more money, but that just cuts into the time that you can devote to whatever you want, and I found that freelancing and doing a lot of other stuff on the side while I was teaching wasn't really super successful, because if I was shooting weddings, every Saturday in the fall you were booked. Mm-hmm. And then when do you edit? During the school week,
seriously.
And so, I do stuff in the summer, and it would tend to bleed over into the school year, when it's like, I got to be focused on what I'm doing in school. I can't be doing this and then doing 5 hours of editing. Some people can, but
mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not one of those people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely seen some people, who've retired and died, just, less than 5 years later. It's sad, and it really makes you think, like, how are you spending your time?
Right. And
do you really love what you're doing for work?
You can't just throw away and live for the moment, whatever, but you have to have a balance of, and, I think about my dad that way. My dad's 70, and he's farming, and he's working with my sister on the farm, and he's like, we were talking about it. He's like, well, what if I don't do her field work? What if I'm not able to do her field work? I'm not able to get on a tractor. And I'm like, dude, you're going to be on a tractor till you die. Like, you have the cardio of like a 30-year-old, if you stop working and start sitting down or something, you're going to fall apart, true. So it's like, Dad, you keep farming, man. You're stronger than I am, but yeah, you have to think about that. And a lot of times people sacrifice a lot for their work, and a lot more than they should.
Yeah. That's something that's even been bugging me as a 21-year-old. But I've had the last so with this whole COVID thing, when everybody went on vacation, I got swamped.
Yeah.
I've been working probably 12 to 14-hour days for the last 6 months. I've had probably a total of 4 or 5 days off. It's been insane.
Because of everybody shifting to video?
Well, you got to realize I'm in the church world, and everybody went online.
Yeah.
So it was, and I'm so thankful for that and all that stuff. But yeah, I just got really busy. That, and I've just had normal jobs too.
Right.
That all kind of came all at the same time, which I'm, again, super thankful for. But I'm like, I want to ride my dirt bike.
Yeah.
But
do something.
You're also keyed into a YouTube community where
exactly.
Where
it's
you're
all good.
Learning from other creators that are talking about burnout and all this stuff too. So it's in the front of our mind, even though we're younger. You mentioned several times you have a need to create and work with your hands and do something. What is it that you really spend your time doing to create now?
Right now, I work on cars. Like, cars are my big thing right now. I'm rebuilding 86 K30 Chevy, and it's not super artistic as a thing, but there are definitely artistic choices being made. But
duct tape. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, duct tape. Rivets. But no, but I'm kind of exploring that too as a way to create kind of functional pieces. Not that this is anything really out there, but that's where my focus has been really kind of pushed into creating things that more like modified vehicles, so it's a little bit of the practical as far as working on the car, the welding, the mechanical piece, which I like. So kind of trending away from art as such and trending into kind of the mechanical, but I see myself like pushing more now towards more creative kind of cars. Like, now that I have I've been like building the skills like bodywork, welding, sheet metal stuff. And so now I can, do stuff. Like I don't know, I stretched a car, that was a while ago. 10 inches longer. So that was interesting. But not great, not a great, final product. Is fine. But yeah, just learning more about how to modify sheet metal and doing all that kind of work was fabricating. Yeah. It's kind of caught my passion, and it's weird cause it's not art and it's not photo and it's not, but it's like what I like doing now. So like I have a 2-post lift in my garage. I built a big 30 by 38 garage so I can work out of. And,
I remember when you were building that garage when I was in high school.
Yeah. So yeah, now I'm working out of it. So that's been kind of local. I'll probably try to get back into photo a little bit. It's so hard now though, because everywhere is photo, and it's easy to get lost. And it's like back when you were shooting stills, you could have, it was in the gallery, people would come in, they look, you'd have a show, and it's, that shows, you put it up on Instagram.
Yes.
And it's like 30 likes, whatever. You know what I mean? Like
it's gone
a few hours later.
It's gone a few hours, and everybody's pursuing even the smallest little bit of everything. You know what I mean? Like there's just, I mean, obviously, they say as a cop out is there's always like some new direction you could go, but it just seems like, you see some guy shooting, the moon with his iPhone on like some sort of rig on a telescope, and it looks amazing. And you're just like, what? I mean, it's like everybody's just, with the YouTube and the Reddit and everybody's just pushing everything so far that there's very little that isn't getting explored.
Right.
And it's, that was kind of the interesting thing to me. You go and you do, some sort of time lapse or something that was really cool, and it was like innovative. Now it's like 7,000 Instagram pages for time lapses, or so, it's just it's hard to differentiate. And I guess it's always been that way in photo, but back when you were showing things on the wall versus showing things digitally, it didn't move as fast.
Yeah. And
it, obviously it's elevating the game amazingly, but it's also, I don't know, it's just exploring all of the unexplored things really fast. And
the barrier to entry is so much lower, unlike fabricating, like that's a skill, a craft that's not quite as easily accessible as taking pictures now. Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I'd like to get back into it, but it's like, I looked at, we were doing some astronomical stuff with Herco astrophotography, and you just go and look, and it's like, we were out in Utah, and it's like everybody's light painting every damn thing. You're sitting there in your campsite, and people are shining flashlights all over the arches and all. It's like, what am I doing? Like you're just one of a million people coming here that are doing this. So I mean, it's photo in itself, I don't know. I mean, it's just become so pedestrian compared to even when it was pedestrian, years ago, where video, at least you have the stories you can tell, but you wonder how many stories are just like filling up, and people watching the stories that you're telling anymore, because it's like they hear the stories, and it becomes lost in the continual bombardment. So it I don't know, I would hate to see video like lose that specialness, which I think it's starting down that road that photo did to be, really telling somebody's story like you're doing here,
Mm-hmm. That's my whole passion.
Yeah.
That's really what I figured out is I love filmmaking.
Yeah.
I mean, I love holding a camera in my hands. It's the best thing ever.
Yep.
And I think I think you heard this when I was talking about, teachers and stuff, but it's like, I just love telling people stories. That's like where it comes down to. Making a living doing that, kind of hard, but, but that's what it comes down to,
Well, I mean, it's obviously there's Hollywood and there's all sorts of like dramatic filmmaking, but it's always documentary filmmaking has always been a low budget kind of thing. And like telling people stories has always been kind of low budget. It's weird. It's like they're the most valuable things.
I know,
and
and
yet
some of the best stuff too. It's like,
but yet Iron Man will pull in, you know, like,
like, a whole heck of a lot of money, you know, every time, and it's guaranteed. Like, oh man. But anyhow.
Yeah, I've got
you have a whole bunch. You were like feverishly writing over here.
So
I'm going to let you do
some
your
notes
thing.
so I didn't lose any good ideas. For the student that doesn't like high school, they're not into the academics, aside from saying, go take an art class, what's a piece of advice you would give to somebody who's doesn't love school?
You're always going to have to work. So pick something. You know, you can't just avoid work all the time, you know, and the skills of drawing, communicating, you know, are important, you know. And so, I mean, I deal a lot with kind of the CTE population. I've been teaching CTE art, and it's like I try to focus on them with drawing. It's like it's a communicating. You need to be able to do it, you know. You need to be able to, even if you're building a shed, or you can't get through life without going all in. You know, so you can't just, I mean, you can avoid high school, you can avoid it, but it's going to catch up with you. You don't want to make that choice where you're just constantly avoiding everything in the world because you don't like it, you know, or it's hard, or you're going to have to do something. So you gotta pick, and you gotta go, and you gotta give it everything. You know, you have to make that choice. Otherwise, somebody's going to be making that decision for you, and it's not going to be you.
I think that answer could also go towards my next question, which is, what's a piece of advice you would give to somebody, to an up-and-coming artist? You know, so maybe they graduated and they're wanting to go out on their own.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I have. I mean, obviously, my path isn't, you know, obviously is very safe, you know. You know, somebody like Cam or somebody, you know, like Jack, or, you know, it's hard when or Kale, or you're going into this art career and you don't know. I mean, obviously the people that were telling me you're not going to make a living, they're right. You know, I mean, and you may make a living great for 3 years and then things change and you're not, you know, like the guys who were, you know, doing film developing or whatever, you know, it's like, you got to move and you got to change. But a lot of that, you know, that just goes away, and we see that in the COVID economy. So it's, you know, you have to be flexible, you have to work hard, but the biggest thing is you have to be someone that people like to work with. And that's something I've always struggled with, because I've always felt, especially like when I was a kid, like as an outsider, like very self-conscious of being the only farm kid in my town, you know, the only one that got up before school and milked cows. Yeah, and then went to school, middle school or whatever, you know. I broke my arm in middle school, and the girl's like, "You fall off a cow?" You know, and I was like, "Shut up." You know? But maybe I did. I don't remember how I did that. I was probably a bike. It's
beside the point.
Right. But, you know, and that's the one thing I love about Vermont, too, is it's a very dairy, very agricultural place. So it's like, it fits me, you know, it fits both of my crazinesses. But, so where were we? But you, what was that question again?
Advice you would give to an up-and-coming artist.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, you got to work and you got to follow. You got to follow, again. This is crazy, but you got to follow your passion, and you know, you have to do what suits you. So you have to take risks, but also you have to, you know, play to your strengths. So being someone like Kale that everybody likes to be around will get you jobs.
For sure.
You can't be gruff. It used to be, you know, like the director was like grumbly, whatever, you know, like it's not, you can't, no one wants to work with you if you're not someone that's personable. So that's sometimes hard for people. That was hard for me, you know, as I was getting into, it's like hard because, you know, you feel like you're the outside, you feel like you always have something to prove. You don't know if people are gaming you, or you don't know, you know, what's going on. So it's easier to be kind of abrasive and standoffish as first, but when you're trying to win people's, support and jobs, and you have to be personable, you know.
Any more?
Yeah, last one.
Okay, go. Oh, well, yeah.
Unless
go
you
for
got
it.
something.
I might take this out. So I'll ask this question now.
Okay.
This video is gonna come out in December.
Sure.
It is August
Yep.
of 2020. What do you think school is gonna look like in December?
We'll be back full time.
You think it'll just be business as usual?
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, this thing went through us pretty quick.
Us being Vermont?
Being Vermont, being New York, March, April. I mean, our numbers are really low.
Right.
It's not coming back here as, you know, like New York City would be crazy right now if it was still like as virulent.
Sure.
So, I mean, with our numbers of 3 new cases a day, 4, 10, you know, I mean, I don't see kids spreading it, and I don't see it taking hold. The only place in Vermont that it could take hold is the schools. So, and if it starts doing that, they'll just shut it down. But I just don't see it doing that because kids don't tend to be getting this or getting as sick and spreading it. So in December, I think we're back to business. I think, you know, it may be hard. It may come back during the winter season and we may be out for a bit. But it's like now in the South where it's the summer, everybody's inside because of the air conditioning and stuff. They're getting hammered. But I don't know. I think we've got a better handle on the COVID situation. So I think that, especially in Vermont, we will be back full time. And I mean, it may be an issue with some people, but I don't think it's going to be a huge issue. I don't know.
Good. I like that perspective.
Go
ahead.
That was what you wanted to know.
Yeah, I just wanted to know where you were at with all that.
Well, I mean, I can tell you too.
What's up?
I mean, February break, I was in New York City.
Oh, really?
All over the freaking place. And I came home and I was sick as hell. So I think I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're immune.
I came home and like 2 weeks later I never got a fever, so they wouldn't test me. And this was early in the COVID stuff, but I had all sorts of like body pains and sweats and stuff. I ended up having like wicked like stomach pains, and I went into the doctors and they're like, oh, well, it could be a kidney stone. So they gave me like a ultrasound instead of a COVID test.
Yeah, right.
You know,
right.
So luckily, no, I have no kidney stones, which I never ever had. But so I'm pretty sure it went through like our entire family in March because we went to New York, and you know, we go to school vacation. I love going to New York City, and we went all over, you know, Statue of Liberty on a packed boat full of people,
right?
You know, or all over Chinatown, all over wherever. And my wife had wicked headaches. Griff was sick. My youngest was sick, and then everybody kind of got better, which some people don't, which is really scary about this. You know, it gets into your lungs and goes crazy. But I'm pretty sure we all kind of went through it, and I'm pretty sure in Vermont when like all of it hit and all the nursing home people were dying. It's like, how does that happen when it's not here? You know, you can't just have 80-year-olds in some random nursing home that never go out, you know, that are dropping dead of COVID.
Right.
How did it get there? And it's not in the public. Of course it's in the public, you know, and Vermont being so rural. And so you're not going to run into like 30 people before 8 o'clock in the morning, like in New York City, you know, it's just not going to be as virulent here, even though it is very, 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 very transmissive. So I think we'll be okay. I mean, I hope we'll be okay. I'm not like a medical doctor.
Right. But are you going to have to do like, do you have to wipe down all the keyboards after each class? Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of different things like maintenance. Like Wednesdays, we're not supposed to be in the building. Like, so they're going to have.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
You knew that?
Yeah, because mom works in the school system.
Oh, duh, right.
So we're doing this like split school. So it's like two days, half the class is going to be there. Then we have Wednesday, which is online remote. And then the other half of the class is coming Thursday, Friday.
Oh, wow.
So kids are home 3 days of the week. So,
oh my gosh,
so on Wednesdays, yeah, I know. It's
especially, wait, for elementary schools too?
I think I think so. I don't know.
I think
I don't know.
See, that would be like really freaking hard as a parent.
Well, or your middle school kids. You want,
Yeah,
like,
well, that too, right.
You want like
Wow.
gangs of middle school kids like
Well,
roaming.
that, and it's just like you think about parents trying to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's crazy.
Wow. All right. Anyway, continue.
So I don't know. I mean, the big thing was the cameras. Like, are we going to wipe them down with alcohol? How are we going to do that? We're not supposed to be sharing art supplies, but it's like you can't give every kid in your class a camera.
Yeah. Right.
You know, or an editing machine. Like,
Right,
and
yeah.
like, yeah, all right, here you go.
Well, if you wipe it down with alcohol,
Yeah, no,
it should be fine.
It's totally fine.
Yeah.
But it's like you think about like, well, we give them a bag to go home, and it's like, what are we doing with the bag now? Do we all went to cloth bags? Do we go back to like a Pelican or something that's like hard surface so we can clean it easier than so there's a lot of things to think of, but I don't think the transmissibility is there on surfaces. I mean, that's what they've been saying. So
right, exactly.
So that's an amazing thing, because if it was, we would be
That'd be very hard.
If it was, it would have been like everybody off the grocery store.
Right.
Boom,
everybody's dead. Yeah. I
Right.
mean, it's
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very, and you know, like I just think how scary like bioweapons, like, and not to say that this is a bioweapon, but
right. Yeah.
the ability to reach everywhere without, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's made a lot of people think for the first time.
Yeah.
It's made a lot of people aware of an enemy that's invisible for the first time, which has been very interesting to watch.
Right.
Because a lot of people have not handled that very well.
Right.
So, sorry, last clarifying question. Not that this is important, I'm just curious. So is it you have like half the amount of people in the class now?
Yeah.
So you're talking like 5, 6, 7 at a time?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a class of like 19, so probably like 9 or 10, whatever. But because you can't social distance.
Right. Yeah.
So I have 19 seats in my room. If I put 19 kids in there, they're all shoulder to shoulder.
Right.
At least if you do half, I can put a seat in between each kid, so it'll spread them a little bit and hopefully decrease. But I don't know.
I wonder how much that'll change. Not the classroom environment, but just like teaching.
Yeah.
I wonder if that'll be almost a benefit or worse.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different things. Like, I mean, people now talk about like flipped classrooms, which is where you give kids like lectures and stuff to watch after school, and then you do like assignments like during school, and it's like ridiculous. For me, like, I'm just like, you're just giving them more work. You're just trying you're just trying to extend the school day. You know, like,
right. My whole thing was like, I never left. My last 2 years of high school, I didn't leave with homework. Right. There's no way I was going to home to do more.
Right.
I was going to do it there.
Yeah.
Right.
Even when the teacher's talking, I'm doing it there.
Yeah, for sure.
You know. Anyway.
Well, and I had a talk with an admin about that. I'm like, you know, you need that separation. You need to know when you're on call, and I think teachers are really bad at just pushing the school day.
Yeah.
After school. And now when it's remote, like, obviously if I go to a job and it's like I'm 9 to 5, like at 5, I'm shutting off, you know?
Yeah, right.
Like, I mean, because I'm getting paid this certain amount, but I guess it's like the new economy where it's like you're on call 24/7, you know, but you know, these kids need the downtime. They need to play, and they need to also, you know, have time to pursue their own stuff, and doing, you know, we've been trying to reduce the amount of homework, and then they come up with this flipped classroom, and everybody's like, oh, it's a flipped classroom. It's like, you know, that's just a cool name for homework. You know, it's just a, you know, it's like in all the AP classes, sure, if a kid signs up for an AP class, yeah, they're going to get more homework. You know what I mean? Like, they know what they're getting into, you know, it's not but like you know, a kid taking history or whatever, it's like, they don't want to sit home after school and watch an hour and a half YouTube video then come back, and cause it's just more school, you know? So
that doesn't make any sense.
But
it's like, you're there for plenty of hours.
right.
Like,
If you can't, if you can't use your hours, but you know, but I'm also guilty of that too. I mean, I have kids film outside of the school day.
Yeah,
you know, and like
most of the time it's filming sports, though.
Mostly it's volunteering, but it's not really volunteering, you know. But I can't force kids to film outside of the school day. But it, you know, I don't know.
But also you're not a required class,
right?
Per se,
right? They're choosing to take it
per se. Like obviously they need credits in that area, but you know. So anyway,
where do you seek inspiration? Typically, this is like a mentor, and we've been interviewing people who like other filmmakers.
Right.
So, but you being a teacher, that might be a little different. So where are you getting inspiration either for teaching or for your art?
I like to take classes. I've been trying to take like a class or two a year for the past few years. So I just took a typography class through CCV, which was amazing, like learning about type. So trying to stay current on kind of different things are like filling holes and stuff that I don't know is I kind of get inspiration. I learned a lot from a typography class because I never took that. I took some graphic design stuff, but that was one thing that was a big hole. And so I've been trying to kind of fill those holes and getting inspiration from like new art stuff that I that I haven't seen before. For teaching, it's the same way. I take some classes about teaching to try to learn more about best practice, but it's not always the most fun. So that's more like work, not as inspiration. But, on the video side, it's just watching. I just watch a lot of video, and even student created, and sometimes I don't watch, sometimes I don't watch a lot and I kind of pull back, but, I try to watch varied stuff, and I've been watching a lot of YouTube now because of that shift and trying to think about whether or not I'm going to add some sort of kind of creator style piece to like a movie one or something, where instead of because is it the fact that these kids are kind of not looking to move down the movie pathway, more looking down the like
creator,
like, is that why I'm losing kids, or is that why it's not,
That would be an awesome class. Seriously.
Yeah, no,
that's genius.
It's great that you're trying to think of the next generation of kids.
Like having like not like a social media management class, but like an online creator class.
Just like, just like the filming is different, like you see, like, Cletus McFarlane. I watch a lot of Cletus. I don't know if he's like a car guy. But he's always got the GoPro and, it's like, how do you do that? I look at him, and when he's doing collabs with other people, he's filming himself all the freaking time. And, that's really hard.
Well, so here's the deal. So I make a lot of YouTube videos. I don't know if you knew that.
Right.
About me and my idiot friends doing whatever we want.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I do that in my
right.
Yeah, I just do video in my free time now. So it's like, it's crazy. But it's very hard to tell a story that hasn't been written yet.
Yeah.
And that's honestly what you could be, because like I like making YouTube videos about like our day or our weekend that we go do or whatever. And I'm able to do that because I know the tools to tell a story.
Right.
But it's very hard to tell a story that isn't written. But then again, that could also really help you for whatever other videos you're making, especially documentary stuff. You're basically making a documentary, but you could call it, the online creator thing. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. The vlogging world, your story of today, which is part of your bigger picture that you don't know the ending to yet.
And there's all sorts of other production piece coming into that, being story pieces. Is that really what's happening? Are they like creating these situations that they're in? Are they, it's like, and how much of it is actually real and how much of it is for views, and how do you start to write this thing? Because you can follow people's life, and that's what's intriguing about YouTube, is you like follow these people and you get to know them as personalities, but it's like, what are they presenting to you? Is that it's not the reality, or is it the reality, or are you picking and choosing? And what makes a good story. So it's a really complicated piece to try to throw together something that somebody wants to watch, because one, you're the main actor and you're the filmer. And you're the editor for the most part. I mean, obviously people are hiring other people, but to get started in that's a lot to put on one person, and all those people start by doing it all themselves for the most part. They're not starting with a crew of people and they're getting a million videos. So, how do you do that? And the other thing is like what people watch. When a 7-year-old or whatever has $21 million or made like,
exactly.
The unboxing toys, it's like,
right.
It's not like Nielsen anymore where you're, where the TV, the show, the Price is Right's getting this many views. It's like, this kid is like making Play-Doh and it's got 4 million, and so how do you know? I mean, a lot of that stuff is still unexplored, it's getting more mature now that YouTube obviously gets older, but there's so many things you're like, wow, that dude's just unboxing stuff and making a whole life.
Yeah. Making way more money than I've ever seen.
Right.
Unboxing things.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting though, like as a class too. You think about it as movies, you break it down, the lighting and the cinematography and the story, but to break down, okay, yeah, there's this whatever unboxing YouTube channel that is successful to me.
Right.
How do you break that down? What makes them successful?
Right.
That might be like more relatable than trying to break down, like you said, the Avengers or something that
oh no, exactly.
kids aren't watching.
Exactly. And that they can immediately put into practice.
Right.
They can throw on, nobody would watch it, but they,
right.
like how does that happen? How do you take off that, but, it's interesting. That world is interesting, but I feel like YouTube is just such a monopoly that something needs to happen there too. Like that's frightening. That like one company has control of that whole sector.
It's Google.
It's Google. Yeah.
Google owns everything.
I shouldn't stop talking now, right?
This freaking CIA might show
my phone, Google off of my phone is recording this.
We'll have to, this is a Patreon only part 2 to the conversation.
We have Google Classroom.
Oh yeah.
Google providing that for free to all the kids. What are they doing? We're not. What are you doing? You're not providing that for free. Right. Like you're either data mining their work. You're either using it to tune your AI so more about like what the kids want. I mean, it's like
the algorithms for YouTube.
It's so scary. I mean, when I grew up, it's like you took your name out of your phone book and you were invisible, basically. I'm sure other people, but it's like I remember when it's like there was anonymity and there was who weren't. I don't know. I look at my kids and how much their data mined, even my 8-year-old watching YouTube and how much my 13-year-old, with all this stuff in it. It's scary. I mean, it's really scary. And
it's crazy.
Everything's public. You can't hide it.
No. So, I mean, you can't really go off the record,
right.
And it's frightening now with the combination of what's happening in the world, kind of the cancel culture and all of that, you just got to be careful of what you say at all times and what you post at all times. And obviously you want to, but everything can be taken differently. And it's like, even like some of these kind of things you would post as like thought kind of processes or something. It's like, you keep everything inside and you kind of put out a public persona to everything that you do. At detriment to kind of really how you feel. So, it's like kind of feeling stuff out and, you have, this is what I say to the public. And it used to be, that's what corporations did. You had a public front, you had a personal front. When you were yourself, you could say whatever you wanted, now it's like you just gotta be quiet and not say things or try not to say the wrong things. And not that, obviously there's a lot of wrong and right things to say, but, you never know the flavor of the minute, what is going to become, blown up out of proportion.
Right.
And so, I don't know. It's a tough world when everything gets recorded and everything I don't know. I mean, I guess it's not. I guess it, it makes people better maybe.
It's cool and it's great. And then it's also a mess. Right.
Yeah.
That's quite.
You keep writing things down.
Some of this is like notes for me to jot down later when I'm sharing his photo on the Instagram feed.
Oh, okay, got it.
Timestamp stuff.
Gotcha.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you're going into this.
Well, and so like he said something about like cancel culture. That sounded interesting, and that's something I haven't.
Yeah,
I'm unfamiliar with that term, so I wanted to look it up.
that is a huge thing right now.
Yeah. What is that?
Oh, it's when someone says something that they, doesn't go with, or it may not be correct or thoughtful or, and it, people just want them removed from whatever they're doing, get them fired, and like take them off their show. And I don't know, it was like Nick Cannon. I don't know what he did, but I mean, that was one of the recent ones. Like there's just a bunch out there where, if you,
Ellen is the current one.
Ellen, yep. And, it's kind of a free speech / propriety. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm not out there slinging hate speech or anything like that, but it's hard to know, in this world now, even saying like guys to a class, like you know what I mean? Like just simple things where you're just not even thinking, like, and
right. Like I say, hey man, to anybody.
Right. And it's like all of a sudden it becomes an issue, and it's like, no, it's like, I don't know. So I don't know. It's interesting, like trying to change for knowing that you may be recorded, knowing that you may be, and even on the off chance of saying something that, and in some ways even saying things that could be correct or
better just misinterpret
misinterpreted, that you're just not,
but they're still right. Yeah.
that's your thought and the other people's thoughts, not the what you want to, and in reality you may be right, but it's not the popular opinion. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're a bad guy, and I don't know. It's an interesting world. I mean, out there with, everything going on, and Trump in the presidency with no filter, just like throwing stuff up and retweeting whatever. And, like, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see in the next 10 years kind of where it plays out with media. And, you watch YouTube just censor and promote what they want, and kind of
all of those big media outlets kind of do what they want,
and it's like your product, but they're channeling it. And I mean, I guess that's always been the case in media, it's like, but it's different when it's like a show, which is a group of people coming together, versus it's like you as a personality, you can't talk about this or it gets demonetized, or you can't like, it's definitely, or the algorithm, your video doesn't get played, it gets ghosted, or whatever. It's insane. It was a better world before we had databases that could store every bit of information on everybody. It was,
I never knew that world though.
I know.
Yeah.
I never lived without the internet.
Right.
I was born after. What?
Final question.
Marketing strategies.
So you're good?
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Find me in the Smart Lab usually.
Well, that's typically an Instagram plug.
I don't put myself out there all that much as far as social media. I mean, I have an Instagram, but it's not public.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. What
it's
about
not
your garage
public,
one?
Cam, not you.
My garage one is open, but that's kind of mellow. That'd be nice to kind of develop that into something YouTubey, but again, I worry about that, like
you'll find him in an undisclosed location in the woods.
Right. well, I mean, I worry about like being a personality and being a teacher. I mean, we used to see it all the time with like our theater teachers would go out and they'd be in performances, and then they'd get flack from the admin for doing in some sort of racy role or whatever, and it's just like, I don't want that stuff crossing over. And, being in a play is one thing, but being like having a video playing is a whole nother, that they can be like,
interesting.
Is your kid crawling under a tractor repairing something? It's like, it's like, how is that safe? Like, well, I don't know. I got another kid. I've got two of them. It's the farm life, but next man up. Yeah. But yeah, it's just things like that I think about, is like, do I really want I mean, there's a payoff for like providing people all that access, but there's also, you know, there's a lot of downsides to that, especially being in public. If I don't know.
Everybody wants to be an influencer too.
Right.
And nobody thinks about that, you know,
Right.
About what they're saying.
No, just about who could be watching.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Remember when we were
yeah.
talking we had someone named Sarah here, and her big line of the podcast I just thought was genius. When she's like, you always see what the algorithm's putting in front of you, but you never see what the algorithm is doing with your content.
Right.
And who it's going in front of.
Yeah.
I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's profound.
Yeah.
You never do think about it.
Yeah.
Never think about what the algorithm's doing with the stuff you post.
Yeah.
You know?
My friend is, he has a Digitalis, I'm going to mess up his name. He has a Spanish name, but he has a bunch of different businesses, but his main business now is YouTube licensing. And he licenses artists that aren't getting their money from YouTube. So there's tons of artists on YouTube who their stuff is getting played, but nobody's collecting. So let's say the Grateful Dead has a concert, whatever, you know, that money could be sitting there and being, you know, accrued. The person who posted it isn't getting the money because it's not their content.
Yeah.
Right.
So he puts the people together with their money, and most of his artists are dead because it's like old jazz artists and stuff like that. And I mean,
The royalties have
the royalties
run
are
out yet.
still
Yeah.
kicking, and no one's collecting because no one knows about it. So he matches the people up and takes 10% or whatever. And
Interesting.
so he's got like 5 employees out in California, but he was my best friend since like elementary school on up. And so it's interesting to hear him talk about that. And he has a band, and I shot a music video for him, and somehow it got like 400,000 views or something. And then it like stopped. So it got 360,000 views, and then it like in like a week, and then none, like for the next like whatever. So did he pay YouTube? Did he use some sort of, you know,
Right.
like whatever to put that in front of like a ton of people, and then all of a sudden it just gets shelved? Like, you know, I'm sure like tons of that stuff is getting promoted for money, you know, like for clicks and whatever.
Yeah. Well, look at the YouTube trending feed.
Right.
There's some stuff that has 100,000 views next to things that have 100 million.
Right.
Which one's trending and which one's paid for?
Right. Right.
You know?
Right.
So, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So he'd be a good one to talk to.
Yeah. That would be.
Got to get him to Vermont, though.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go here and then we'll wrap this up. We're to the end of your independent study, so
Okay.
I don't want to.
It's okay.
I don't want to take too much more.
My
time.
individual work time. Yes.
But I want to talk about him because one day I want him on the podcast.
Yeah.
And that is Overton.
Overton. Yeah.
Holy crap, that kid is unbelievable.
Yeah. He's good.
He's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but something that I find interesting, you know, he's like, he's probably the most talented filmmaker that I've ever met.
Is me too.
I mean, just unbelievable.
Yeah.
He was how many years before me? Probably 4, 5, 6, something like that.
I don't know. Not that many.
Really?
Maybe. Yeah.
He was never.
Because he just graduated college.
Oh.
So he's like maybe a year out of college.
Oh wow. Okay, so not much at all.
No.
So we must have barely missed each other.
Yep.
Super dramatic film guy, right?
Yeah, he's made
Yeah.
the best movies I've ever seen.
His
out of
10-minute
Vermont.
short
Yeah.
films will like
rock your world.
emotionally shake you. Yeah.
And they're just perfect.
Yeah.
They're like perfect.
Yeah.
You know anything about where he's at right now?
Sure do. He's in quarantine. He just put out the movie Quarantine, the musical. Yeah.
He made a full-fledged musical. I'm like, how in the world? Who did the music?
He graduated film school. He went to Dodge Chapman, and he's just kind of shopping stuff, trying to find work. And the COVID thing kind of knocked it down a little bit. But he worked for. He like interned and started working for anonymous content, like their video product, like high end music video,
good,
like
yeah.
and So he was working there. I don't know if he is working there anymore. I'm not sure. I don't know. But he was doing work for them, just kind of not just like production assistant, kind of feeling around, but he hasn't really made the jump. I talked to him. He's got like another movie that he wants to shoot. I was trying to work with him. He just texts me. He's like, do you know, do you have a place or do you whatever, And I was like, oh, we could shoot it on my parents' place. Oh, my grandparents' place is better for, So he's got some movie in the works that needs like a 4-door pickup truck and shot in the 70s. I don't know. So, that's on his back burner. But I don't know. He hasn't really made that jump to like the industry, and he needs to like soon.
So that's the interesting thing about him that I've heard is like, I mean, he could be making like incredible movies,
anything
like full-fledged movies.
Yeah.
But even at his level and the stuff he has to show for it, he hasn't made the jump yet.
Right. And I think COVID kind of knocked him. He's only been out like a year or two out of film school. So it hasn't been that long. And his film school movies are amazing. I don't know if
they're insane.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
And so I don't get how the Hollywood world works. And I'm sure it's not as easy as, look, I'm super talented. Obviously there's so much crazy stuff that goes on with control of talent. And
I was going to say, he's also going for like the director role, I would assume, which is the
and you
top
don't,
stat of the podium.
Right.
So.
And it's a hard thing because we've been shooting like Overton, over and I, but like when he was at school for 4 years, we shot every day basically for 4 years as he was at school, So this kid has been in production, now for 10 years or whatever, like incredible. His ability to shoot something and to write and to, he's seasoned, he for him to hop in as a PA, it's a waste of his talent, and it's frustrating watching him because I know that like at some point, but it's like, how long do you bang your head against the wall before you start pursuing other stuff that's not what you're good at, I know. I mean,
can't let that go to waste. Dude.
No. And the good thing is there's so much stuff getting shot right now, but there's so much work. I mean, obviously COVID's shut a lot of stuff down, but with Netflix and all of these people launching streaming stuff and everybody home, it's like everybody's starving for content and there's so much being shot that you would hope that he could like latch on to something, but it would be interesting for him. I mean, I would see like just bypassing the whole thing and shooting his own stuff.
Right. He's incredible at writing.
He's good at writing, but even in high school, his videos are 300,000, 400,000 views. You know what I mean? Like, and
his Dodge College application video is way up there.
Right. So, I mean, of anyone that could kind of, he just needs to find the right person to poach him and kind of be like, hey, we're going to give you this much money.
Yeah.
Go make something, but I don't know if there are people out there like that, that would take like an unproven, not that he's unproven, but it's a big step from doing a GoFundMe and shooting something, like a college final to somebody laying down, $1 million.
Yeah, $1 million to go. Yeah.
On a kid who's never directed, a movie.
A movie. I mean, he's directed plenty of movies, but not right. So you seen what Kevin James is doing on YouTube?
Sort of.
Okay. He would be perfect for something like that. Like just thinking about it. Kevin James puts out a short film a week.
Oh, right.
And they're incredible.
Yeah.
Like they're really, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they're hilarious, of course.
Right.
But they're like super well made and stuff. That would be really interesting.
Well, and you look at like the people he's living with. It's interesting. Like the musical, he's living with like his lead actor for most of his.
Yep. Who's also incredible.
He's really good, Kyle. He's living with Sam Robinson, who is another kid that came out of EHS. Who it's his stuff now is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's gotten really good.
And he never went to school. He just followed Mike out west and like was like, I'm going to do the same stuff and get in with people and start shooting, and which was amazing because he wasn't at all bought in at Essex. I don't know if I can say, but you know, like, he was just kind of, you know, I don't know, just not into as filmmaking as much as
it clicked later
as Mike was. Yeah, it clicked later totally, and his stuff is phenomenal now. And he's shooting. He said he shot 6 commercials last week or something like that.
Holy crap!
Yeah, like if you follow him, Sam Robinson DP or something, they were working on like a bunch of different stuff. But he has a red and his own red like you do, and but it's funny because Mike was like, well, we shot this during quarantine, or no, we shot something. He's like, well, it was only the stuff we had around the house. And you, dude, you know, like, you had like a broom pole. Yeah, you've got right. You have a fully professional DP and like a, you know.
Well, so Sam is he's making the first movie that'll be shot in like every continent or something like that.
Yeah, Nomad the film.
Yeah. I don't know much about it other than that fact. Yeah. That's the first one to be shot in every. Yeah, whatever. But
I had about this much in Sam. very little.
That's funny.
He was in my class. But I mean, he did the 50 all the time, and and he was definitely a part of a lot of Mike's stuff. So he was there and seeing how stuff worked, and I'm glad that he really put it forth because he's really talented. And you know, that's the cool thing of being a teacher. You see all of these kids, and you see where they're going, and you just, I mean, it's also the bad thing. It's like you hope that they're eating and, you know, surviving and can actually provide for themselves after a while, because, you know, the freelance, the gig economy is tough, you know, unless you have an in, you know, and I mean, I guess that's for everybody. Everybody's got to find their way, but there's no one path, you know, and it's everybody always used to think, oh, you go here and then you go to college and then it's like everybody's finding out that that's not really the case anymore. You know, the whole school to college to like amazing job just isn't. That's a fallacy kind of in some ways, and in some ways it isn't. But you know, it's hard to watch kids because they look at you and they're like, oh, how am I going to succeed? And I'm like, I don't know. You know,
with
like, I don't have that answer. I mean, I can point you in different directions, but I mean, I personally, it's like, I feel bad if I'm like guiding kids. Like I feel, I don't want to be like, okay, you need to do this, this, and this, and this.
Yeah,
like
I feel like film school.
I feel like I'm responsible. You know, like I, you know, and it's a lot. You know, I'm not a guidance counselor, but it's a lot to know, and it's a lot of responsibility. If you know, this kid's now 40 years old and doesn't have a job, and you know, it's not. Is that my fault that they went to film school and spent $178,000 or something, and then came out in an amazing amount of debt and then never hooked on to anything?
Would you have recommended film school for me?
For you?
Yeah. As a high schooler?
I don't know. I mean, I think
I didn't know either.
I think you got.
I took a gamble.
When you started shooting with Mount Mansfield, though, I think that was super helpful. I mean, Kyle's amazing over there, and
that was huge for sure. That taught me that taught me everything I know now. Right. Really, you know, I mean, well, that's not discrediting you.
No.
But as far as how the business works,
right.
It taught me everything I know.
There's only so much, you know, you can teach in a school situation, you know, and it's like you have to make that jump. And that's where kids that get into college and go that college pipeline, sometimes it's really hard to make that loop from college to, because you're so focused. All of your product is focused on like pleasing a professor or doing whatever.
Yeah, right.
It's not making money. You know, it's not making money off the craft. It's not earning a living. It's not whatever. It's like, it's a whole different world.
It's a whole different world.
And when people are generating clicks and views earlier, that's more helpful. Like with YouTube, you know, it's like you can see what, you know, what's going to make your money. But there's a lot of stuff out there too that, you know, doesn't go on YouTube, and, you know, commercial videos and different things that, you know, obviously everything almost now goes on video, but, you know, there's video work out there that you don't know about. But, you know, you have to, you know, that college path isn't always productive, depending, and we'll see how it plays out for Overton. I mean, I'm sure that he'll be successful. He's too talented to not be.
Oh,
but,
for sure. Yeah.
But, you know, is it worth doing something different and just start shooting, you know, making the local connections and, you know, getting your friends to go fund you and shoot something and then getting noticed? Or, you know, is it a Kale philosophy versus an Overton philosophy? You know, like what?
Interesting. Yeah.
Or is it Whitney, you know, but it's different for each people.
Right.
Like,
Everybody's kind of doing it different.
Right. Right. And like,
we'll see who succeeds.
Well, and I think Whitney had, you know, is the most normal path. You know, it's like I go to Champlain. Sure. I mean, he shot a ton for us. Go to Champlain, hone whatever you need to, you know, go into someplace local for advertising, you know, filming, and that works. DP, right. That works for him. You know, that probably wouldn't work for Kale. Yeah, you know, so it's like it doesn't. That may fit you. That may fit him. That may not fit somebody else. So it's really interesting time to judge that. And at least now that I'm older, I get to see these kids go through. Like when I was younger teaching, I had no idea. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I just got out of college. I don't know what to tell you. You know, I'm 26 years old, and you're telling me like, well, what should my kid do to get to here to here? I'm like, I have no idea. I have zero idea how your kid's gonna be, you know, a movie star or how you're, you know, like,
right, yeah.
And so at least now at 45, I can, you know, I've seen kids go through and I've seen kids be successful, and I've seen what works and what kind of is a slower path or not. So I don't know. It's better now.
Yeah.
It makes me less anxious.
That's good. Yeah. Well, hey man, this was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
2 hours and 10 minutes. Can you believe that?
No.
2 hours and 10 minutes.
Conversation.
Yeah, that was awesome. Andy and I always talk after the podcast, and we're like, man, that 20-minute mark, I thought we were never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, the first 10 minutes goes slow, but then...
Yeah. But yeah, appreciate you.
Oh, no problem.
I appreciate you, what you did for me in high school.
Awesome. Thank you.
And just giving me something that I actually truly did enjoy in high school, because the rest of it was stupid.
I'll tell Norris that.
Yeah, let Norris know. I liked him, but I hated his class. No. Anyway, thank you, man. I appreciate this.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.